Welcome to Heart on the Table, a tarot-inspired podcast for mothers, healers, and humans in the messy middle of becoming.
Two therapists, two moms, one card at a time.
Every other week, we pull a tarot or oracle card
and explore its symbolism through the lenses of trauma healing, attachment theory, motherhood, and intuitive wisdom.
Together, we weave our clinical therapy knowledge
with personal connections to motherhood, spirituality, magic, and womanhood.
Reflecting on what it means to mother yourself and others
across timelines, triggers, and transformations.
I'm Bree Levitt, licensed clinical social worker.
And I'm Miranda Peterson, licensed clinical social worker.
It's part sacred space,
part cozy couch chat.
Expect laughter, insight, and a whole lot of heart. Welcome back to Heart on the Table. I just wanted to let you all know that for the month of April, we're just going to be taking a step back and taking a little break away from the podcast. With Miranda having her baby, I'm traveling. I'm celebrating the birthday of my 1-year-old son. We have too much going on in April, but we will be returning in May. We're hopeful to get some podcast episodes with our guests up in May, so stay tuned. Thanks so much for listening to our last episode, if you did, on AI and AI. That's really what it was about. Today we're going to be diving back into our series on the Major Arcana of the Tarot. Just to I think we have plans to kind of continue that series as we're going along, but as other things get us excited or something pops up that we feel passionate about, we've kind of just been deviating a little bit. But today we are coming back to the tarot cards and doing the Wheel of Fortune.
Yes. So looking at the Wheel of Fortune, it's card number 10. And there's a lot happening on this card. There are many different colors and a lot of different figures and a giant wheel in the center. The 4 figures on either corner of the card are the angel, eagle, lion, and bull, which we did a little research beforehand, and that actually represents, I can't remember what exactly the zodiac signs are. Let me find it.
Yeah, me neither.
It was Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. I also notice and wonder if, like, in the center of the wheel, there's some, like, symbology or, like, symbols. Maybe I'm making up words here, but I feel like that represents the 4 elements.
Let me see.
Because that one on the bottom definitely looks like water.
The alchemical symbols are the 4 elements. So between the letters on the Wheel of Fortune are the symbols for the 4 elements: mercury, sulfur, salt, and water. And these represent the fundamental building blocks of reality.
Okay.
And transformation and change, and the hidden forces that shape events.
There's so much more to this card than at first glance. Because, okay, which ones are you talking about? The inner circle here?
The inner circle, yeah.
Okay. This outer circle has the TARO, which I feel like has come up before on a card. I think it was the Magician. I feel like the Magician had a book with those 4 letters on it.
Yes.
Or was it the
High Priestess? I think so. It's the High Priestess, right?
Was it a scroll?
Let me look.
The scroll had the TARO.
The High Priestess.
Which, at first glance, kind of looks like it spells tarot, if you include the T a second time. But I feel like it stood for something different.
So what it says is, the letters on the wheel often contains letters that can be read multiple ways.
Ooh, tell me.
So possible interpretations, it can be tarot for tarot, ROTA, which is Latin for wheel, TORAH, divine law or wisdom.
That's what it was.
That's the one on the High Priestess, right?
Yep, that was the one.
And then ORAT, which is Latin for speaks. Together they imply divine order, hidden knowledge, and the unfolding of fate.
Wow.
It's kind of cool.
That is kind of cool. Can you find anything about like what these other
The
alternative,
symbols.
like, yeah, the alternating symbols are between the TARO?
Yeah, let me look. I also, before I move on, I think it's kind of cool that the letters can be read in multiple different ways on the wheel,
Mhm.
because I feel like that also speaks to this symbology. I don't know if that is a word, but it does feel right now that I've heard you say it.
Yeah.
I'm going to look it up. Today, I'm just like, what are words? Yeah, it is a word. The study or use of symbols.
All right, then.
We're also a dictionary now on this podcast. Anyway, I think it's cool to be able to look at this and realize that it can be read different ways, because I feel like if we're thinking about this card in terms of like different phases of life
Mhm.
or how the wheel kind of keeps turning, it's like life is always going to be something different at any given point in time.
Yeah. It's all dependent on like your interpretation and your perspective.
Your interpretation,
outlook.
your perspective, where you're at, and how you're able to interpret.
Yes, I love that.
Like, dependent on where we're at in our life, I feel like, I mean, I think the term hindsight is 2020, right?
Mhm.
Like, we may even look back on times in our life and be able to look or connect to something vastly different than we did when we were like in it.
Mhm.
So I like that.
I do like that.
Okay, and then let's see the little symbols in the middle. Mercury symbolizes mind, movement, and transformation. In alchemy, it represents the spirit or consciousness, adaptability and fluid change, communication between realms. In the context of the card, Mercury reflects how life is constantly shifting and evolving. Sulfur represents energy, passion, and the active force of change. In alchemy, it symbolizes soul, drive, and intensity, the spark that creates transformation. On the wheel, it represents the force that pushes events forward. Salt represents stability in the physical body. In alchemy, it symbolizes matter, structure, grounding. It balances the more volatile forces of mercury and sulfur. In the card, it reflects the material reality we experience while the wheel turns. Water represents emotion, intuition, and the unconscious. In alchemy, it symbolizes the emotional realm, flow and adaptability, the deeper current beneath events. And on the Wheel of Fortune, it reminds us that change also happens internally, emotionally, and spiritually.
Which I feel like all of those are maybe themes that have shown up in other cards along the way.
Yeah.
Like the undercurrent and the emotion being like the water that we've seen.
Yep. The water always that we kind of see, right? Yeah. These remind me of just this little saying that I use in lifespan integration. There's this one protocol that we use where I should say, am directing clients to connect with themselves at the very beginning of their life, like at conception. And I keep saying we. Who is we? I'm the therapist. I think I feel bashful sometimes in being like, I do that. No, so I'm like, we collectively.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I do that. But there's a saying that I say to clients that is when I'm kind of directing them through this like imaginative, you're connecting with this cell being, your cell being. And then I'll say something like, and just notice at this stage of life that you are water, you are matter, and you are energy. And all of this still exists inside you today. Mm-hmm. And I love that like saying, and just kind of seeing like the elements on here just made me think of it.
I like that perspective.
It's a cool one.
How often do we really sit and think about ourselves as water, matter, and energy?
Yeah. We're like this little tiny cell. Mm-hmm. Okay. Back to the symbols in between the letters. Let's see. I notice you mentioned the Sphinx at the top, right?
No.
Okay. So I'm noticing on the top of the wheel, there is a Sphinx holding onto a sword. There is a snake falling down, seems, like falling down the left side of the wheel. And then there's this figure that it has a devilish.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah, it has like a devilish look to it. It's red, but the wheel is sitting on the figure's across its back. It looks like this little figure is kind of holding up the wheel. Um, One thing I noticed too, I know when you called out like the what do we have? We have, what is that?
Lion.
A lion,
Bull, angel, and eagle.
lion, bull, angel, eagle. They're all holding on to books.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Probably something to do with wisdom.
Okay, yeah, good point. Okay, I'm gonna look up what the symbolism means behind like the snake. Okay, so the three figures moving around the wheel represent the rise, fall, and balance of life's cycles. The snake moving downward represents decline or the downward turn of the wheel.
That's interesting because if the snake is on the left side and the wheel is going the direction the snake is facing, the wheel's actually going backwards.
I know. That's what I was just thinking. Yeah. Which makes me wonder. So if the snake represents the downward turn of the wheel, it kind of symbolizes chaos. It symbolizes loss of power or control, or the shadow side of cycles. So where maybe I would say a shadow side of a cycle would be where maybe we feel like we're going backwards or we're taking 2 steps back before we take more steps forward.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, traditionally, like the serpent is symbolic of like, because the snake sheds its skin.
Yeah.
And just therapeutically speaking, like shedding things that aren't serving you anymore. Even if we try to hold on to them, like things that aren't meant to be or just not meant to be.
Yeah. And while a snake shedding its scales is a symbol, I would say, of renewal. However, in the imagery on the card, it could also feel like when we're going through renewal, like we're taking some steps backwards.
Well, and I think in terms of cycle speaking, like renewal often feels like death before it feels like new life.
Mm-hmm.
Like you do kind of have to like say goodbye or learn to let go of things before you're able to then see a life or a future without those things.
I just keep thinking in my head, I wish we could ask a snake, like, so what does that feel like for you when you shed your skin? And like, does it feel like renewal? Does it feel like you're taking does it feel like death? Does it feel like you're dying?
Yeah. I think those are all great questions. I wish we could answer that.
I mean, what does that feel like for you?
If you think about everything else though that's cyclical that we've talked about like seasons and even like like a period cycle.
Yeah. Feels like death.
It kind of does.
My period just returned recently and I'm like, holy Lord, these are heavy. These are heavy periods. This also says it reminds us that a peak doesn't last forever and every high point eventually turns.
Yeah. Which I feel like is actually something that's come up a lot in my own like therapeutic practice of like people tend to, I think, live on the surface or like live in the middle, right? Because they don't want to. Okay, here we go. They don't want to feel the down cycle. And which equally means that there is no momentum or no capacity for feeling anything greater than either. They just are stuck.
Yes.
Stuck at this middle ground where, things often have to feel bad before they feel good.
I've told clients before, like, the fact that you are able to feel pain so deeply shows me that you have the capacity to feel so deeply on the other spectrum, on the other side of the spectrum. But I think that people do tend to get stuck. And there's an element of vulnerability too in trying to achieve the high point of the next cycle, whatever that looks like. I'm just thinking about anything I've ever done in my life that has been really good for me has also come with a side of feeling really, really scary. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on the topic of being stuck or feeling stuck, I feel like in my personal life, there are a couple of individuals, myself included, who feel like we've reached this plateau of like, okay, well, how do I keep going? Like, where's the next step? And I think coming back to the conversation that we've had before about like the arrival fallacy
Yes.
of like the what's the next thing. I need to take my own advice sometimes.
I was just thinking that
Don't
for
we
myself
all?
too, be related to the conversation we were just having before we hit record.
I know.
I'm like, wait, I'm kind of where I hoped to be a long time ago.
Yeah. But I said something to someone else in my life who was experiencing the same thing. Well, I was like, well, maybe, you know, instead of trying to reach for the next thing, maybe we just sit in it. As like uncomfortable as it is to sit in it,
Yeah.
there's maybe nothing else for us to do.
I think we're talking to ourselves.
I
here.
know. We're going to just have a conversation with ourselves in the mirror. The idea that you have to, when you reach this plateau, what else is there to do but jump? In a metaphorical sense, take a huge risk or do something. Like with the arrival fallacy, we don't want to take the next step forward because we don't know what the end looks like, right?
Yeah.
Or I feel like that was some concept to that. Sometimes you just gotta jump or like take the leap or like do the thing that scares us the most because that's what's going to like push us further. That is so hard. I say that now and I can feel all sorts of anxiety like coming to the surface.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Uh-huh.
What is that choice? And then you come to the overanalyzation of like just overanalyzing the choices.
Yeah.
Is this the right choice? Is this not the right choice? What will this mean?
Yep. And oftentimes, I don't think we know what the right choice is.
There's no right choice.
There's
only
no right
choices
choice.
that teach you things.
Like, people have such a tendency to get hung up on what's the right thing to do. And when I say people, I want to make it clear that I'm also a part of that group.
You are a person.
Yes, I am a person.
Human.
I'm human. But it is human to feel like, but we need to know for sure. That it comes back to uncertainty that we talk about a lot in like when we're talking about the cards and doing our episodes on the cards, because I think the uncertainty piece comes up a lot too. And we just have a really hard time tolerating uncertainty.
I wonder if the fear behind like making mistakes is because we have this pressure as a culture and as a society that like we can't mess up or we can't afford to mess up, maybe literally and or figuratively. Like there is not a lot of grace these days for choices to go awry or for you to learn lessons.
Yeah.
Which is hard. But it's multifaceted, I feel like.
I agree. Okay, moving on. The red figure is the rising side. The red creature Let me try again. The red creature climbing up the wheel is usually interpreted as Anubis, the Egyptian god associated with death and transition. So it's not the devil.
Okay.
It symbolizes the rising phases of life, rebirth and renewal. movement between endings and beginnings, the upward turn of fortune. Anubis, being the guide between worlds, reflects how change often I cannot read.
It's
Oh
a
my god.
challenging day.
Okay, hold on.
It's okay.
Let me start over. Anubis, being the guide between worlds, reflects how change often involves crossing thresholds in life.
Ooh, crossing thresholds. That's being associated with. You said it was death, right?
Death and transition.
I feel like this is maybe what I needed to hear today.
I know, I'm actually like, okay, this card's not as. I don't think we were both like, okay, well, we're doing another tarot card episode. But I think this is actually good. I think it reminds me of like, okay, yeah, this is actually fun to do. I like it. There's such a fear in our, maybe more so in Western culture, of death and the finality of death and what death means. But in all the cards that we've explored, death is a part of the life cycle. And as a culture, we tend to want to turn away from that fact because death also sucks. You know, like the death of a person that you love, it's very final. But I just think we have to remember it is part of cycle. All cycles. Nothing lasts forever. Death is the one thing in life that is certain. But I just think it's important to remember as we're talking about transition. With any transition, with any crossing of the threshold, there is death. Like it is always present. It is the one thing that is certain. And death isn't everything. Death isn't just like something that happens to us mortals. Death is just a part of any cycle. And I think that we have to practice or learn how to have some acceptance around that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me look it up really quick because I'm going to absolutely mess it up. Okay. So this quote is from the Joker. Have you seen it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I mean, I know what you're talking about. I don't know if I've seen it all the way through. You know me in a movie reference, right?
It's come across like my algorithm.
Okay.
So I've not watched the movies in such
I know me neither.
But it says when we understand that each day isn't one more day, but one less, we'll start giving more value to the things that truly matter. Which you were saying like it's a part of everything.
Yes.
It's not something we can get away from. It's not something that we can avoid. And I think even too, when we look back and like reflect on ourselves, who I was as a person like 5-10 years ago, there are some aspects of her that I miss. But I'm grateful for where I am now.
Same.
Like for what I've learned. There are some times when I find myself like a memory will come up and I was like, wow, that was so, like, why did I say that? Why did I do that? That was so stupid. Like, and I can judge my past self, but then I think about too, like, she didn't know what I know now.
Yeah.
And I think coming back to the constant of change.
Yes.
Death is a part of that.
Your quote from the Joker reminds me, have you heard of Memento Mori? So Memento Mori, what culture does it even come from? Does it come from Latin culture?
It's in a book I've read in the last couple of years.
Oh, it comes from ancient Roman culture.
It's a Latin phrase.
Yes, a Latin phrase translates to remember that you die. Also remember that you must die. Originates from ancient Roman culture. It was famously used during triumphal parades where a servant would whisper the phrase to a victorious general to prevent hubris, reminding them of their mortality despite their godlike status that day. I didn't know that. I love that. That gave me chills. Okay, let me read that one more time because that's really good. Okay, hold on. It was famously used during triumphal parades where a servant would whisper the phrase to a victorious general to prevent hubris, reminding them of their mortality despite their godlike status that day. I love that.
It kind of feels spot on.
We all die, right? Like that is the string that connects us all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's memento mori is now meant to be like a grounding kind of thing.
Like a bring you back to...
Like a bring you back to the present, a bring you back to... I think it's very much something that I would classify as like people who practice memento mori really are practicing acceptance of the present and acceptance around death. I've seen it now. There's like things that you can buy, or I had an app on my phone at one point that just had like it was just like little circles and just kind of showed me like each day, I think a new circle would be like blacked out. And at one point I was like, you know what? I don't want this on my phone anymore because I don't like it. But I do think it's a beautiful practice. And I think that the phase is something beautiful to remember.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Like, no, it's one less day, which should, on one side, maybe there's anxiety there, but on another side, I hope that would give us some encouragement to really live each day to our fullest. It also just makes me think about myself, and I'm really trying to make a practice of not stressing out about stupid things. Like Miranda and I were talking before this about just like some of our stressors around like work and trying to balance being a mom and also having like career goals and wanting to do all the things. And I was just talking about some of the stress that I feel attached to work. And it's like, who cares? Like it's all fake. That's how it feels. Yeah. Okay, anything else you want to say on that one?
I think the color red stands out for this figure in particular. I think historically red is a symbol of passion.
Yeah.
It's interesting that passion would be associated with death. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It's like the only color. I mean, it's blue, gray, yellow, and black, but the red really stands out.
Mm-hmm. This is
card.
the one figure that is like bright red. Okay. The Sphinx at the top, holding a sword, like I said. The Sphinx is a mythological guardian known for riddles and wisdom. Symbolizes higher knowledge, balance between opposing forces, awareness during life's changes, and the mystery of fate. The sword represents clarity and truth. While the wheel spins beneath it, the Sphinx remains calm, suggesting that wisdom comes from... I don't know what is with me in reading today. Okay, while the wheel spins beneath it, the Sphinx remains calm, suggesting that wisdom comes from observing the cycles rather than fighting them. I like that. So while the Sphinx is sitting at the top of this wheel turning, like he's just... There's symbolism in him just holding the sword. Like he's not using the sword to fight. He's just holding on to the sword. Like he's not fighting anything.
So then what is the sword used for?
I don't know. Maybe he's going to need to fight at some point. I think the symbol, like I think what the symbolism is I think that it's very natural for everyone to want to fight.
Mm-hmm.
I think that him holding the sword shows he could fight. He's ready to fight, but he's holding back. Because I think that whenever there's transition or crossing of a threshold, there's always a little bit of anxiety. There's always a tendency to want to fight it. Because I think when we're going through transition, it can feel very unnerving. Mm-hmm. It can feel very unnatural. So I think that him holding the sword is like, that is there. Mm-hmm. Like that will to want to fight it is there. But we see like he's just withholding that.
Yeah. I think probably too, in like the more figuratively sense, like it probably is just another aspect of like the wisdom that it takes to. I was just thinking of any historical figure that's ever held a sword does so in the name of protection, right? But knowing when to use that, I think, differentiates between a good leader or
Yeah.
a wise one,
Mm.
one who's seen many things and knows when it's appropriate to.
To actually use it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking about if this card represents kind of transition. With transition, there usually comes like traveling into the unknown.
Mm.
And like maybe being prepared
Yeah.
to fight is normal, but asking ourselves, do we have to? I'm thinking about with when we've experienced trauma, how there's often like maybe a tendency to pull out that sword quicker than maybe we actually need it, right? Learning how to have balance between like, I can fight, but is this actually a moment that requires it?
Okay. Well, it came up the other day that like are or is trauma response and intuition two sides of the same coin? And learning how to like differentiate between the two and how difficult and challenging that can be.
Yeah. I often think too that like our intuition gets clouded by trauma too, like trauma response.
And also, I mean, I think in some certain situations, like your intuition is trying to tell you that there's danger, which I think then turns into trauma response. Maybe when we don't listen to it,
Yeah.
when we learn to ignore it, override it,
Yeah.
make it quiet.
Or at some point in our life too, our intuition could have become something difficult for us to listen to if it was constantly kind of dismissed
Mhm.
by our caregivers or
Yeah.
I wanted to look at what does the number 10 mean in terms of Wheel of Fortune.
My brain fog is really starting to show.
So the Wheel of Fortune, the card number is number 10. And as with most of the tarot cards, that does carry a meaning. So number 10 is the symbol behind that is kind of the completion of a cycle and the beginning of a new one. In numerology within the tarot, number 1 through 9 represents the progression of a journey, and 10 represents the culmination or turning point of that journey. The Wheel of Fortune, being card 10, reflects the moment when something has run its course and the wheel turns into the next phase. It's the point where a pattern may complete itself, lessons reach their peak, life begins shifting into the next chapter. And the number 10 is also interpreted as 1 plus 0. 1, beginnings, initiative, new energy. 0, potential, the infinite, the unknown. Together, it can symbolize a reset point, the end of one cycle, immediately giving birth to another.
That's what kind of popped up for me as you were explaining the numerology was if it's a turning point in a transition, it starts over, doesn't it?
You're okay.
From 1 to 0 being the Fool, right? The
Yes.
Fool was 0.
Yep. Yeah.
That's cool.
It says, before the wheel in the Major Arcana story, the first half of the journey is all about personal development. The Fool learns about identity, structure, relationships, and power. That's cool. I didn't really think about that. Like all of the first kind of 9 cards have all been about like the mother, the queen, the king, the mother, the father, the emperor, the empress, not the queen and the king, it's the emperor and the empress. And all these different relationships, like our relationship to spirituality, our relationship to our intuition, which is interesting and will be interesting to see as we continue our Major Arcana. What is this? Series, I guess. To see where that then leads after number 10.
I feel like it gets into maybe values.
I think so.
Because like strength and Death is part of it too, I know.
Yep, the lover. No, we already did the lovers, which again, back to
Relationship.
relationships. But then, like, I know the moon. I'm really excited to talk about the moon.
Sun.
The moon, the sun, the world. Yeah. It does say the journey after the wheel becomes more about inner strength, perspective, surrender, and transformation. In a life sense, 10 often shows up as turning points, fate-like events, timing shifts, the sense that something bigger than you is moving things along. It reflects the realization that life is not purely linear. It continues to move in a cycle. I love that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we talked a little bit about how this card fits into like just different life contexts or different life circumstances with career choices.
I was looking at the motherhood stuff to see.
I'm in the thick of that one right now.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you are too.
This, again, connecting this back to just like some therapy themes, back to uncertainty. Healing in therapy is kind of learning how to stay grounded and become more Sphinx-like, I would say, as we learn to tolerate the uncertainty of crossing of thresholds, of transition, etc.
How to like stand at the center of it all and truly just take it in. I mean, back to the Joker quote, like, it's not one more day, it's one less day.
Yeah.
And although it might be uncomfortable and you might feel stuck, I mean, it is part of the process.
Yeah, and how do we continue to stay grounded amidst it all? Yeah. Sometimes it's not easy. Yeah. Anything else to say on the Wheel of Fortune? Do we feel good about it?
It feels good.
Well, I think we're going to wrap up our Wheel of Fortune episode here.
Thank you so much for listening. If you have any thoughts, comments, questions, please check out our Google form on it's linked in our bio on a couple of different places. It's TikTok.
Yeah.
And then we are just so excited for some upcoming guest episodes, so stay tuned for those.
Yes, I'm in talks with some people. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us in today's conversation. We hope this space offered you a spark of meaning, a reminder of your own strength, or simply the comfort of knowing you're not alone in the messy middle of becoming.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to share it with a friend, subscribe, or leave us a review. It helps this little community grow.
You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Heart on the Table Pod, where we share more reflections, tarot pulls, and behind-the-scenes glimpses of the podcast.
Until next time, may you keep noticing the magic woven into your everyday life.
Please remember, while we are both licensed clinicians, this podcast is not therapy and does not create a therapeutic relationship. The conversations here are for educational and reflective purposes only. If you are seeking mental health support, we encourage you to connect with a licensed provider in your area. Thanks for listening.